Or if I put it down and you can't hear me, let me know and I'll pick it back up. So, hi. Nice to see you all. My name is Loren, and as was quickly said, I run Dealy Mahler Strategies, which is a strategic communications firm. And I want to give you a smidge of a background on why in the world that's relevant for here today, because it sounds like I just took a wrong turn and ended up at the wrong conference. But I do that all the time. And this is one of my favorite things to do, is to take what I do and talk to people who do what you do, because in reality, we should know a lot more about each other, and then we'd all be a lot better at what we do, which is kind of the point. So I started Dealy Mahler Strategies about 3.5 years ago. The first 10 years of my career was down in DC doing security communications with the government in different cool roles and sitting in different cool buildings and working at different cool agencies. And then enough of that, came up here, started doing corporate communications in New York City, and quickly learned that I was bored out of my mind, because if you have ever done corporate communications, it is boring as hell. So learned a lot, really awesome, missed the security, missed linking those two parts of my life together. Love the communications, love the security, and this is where we landed. This marries all those worlds, and it's been such a fun space to play in. So I mostly work in cybersecurity communications, so a lot of incident response stuff and a lot of stuff that falls outside of that space. In the internally, how can we communicate better between our team and the rest of the organization? How can we communicate better with the board? How can we communicate better externally with our customers so that they understand what we do and why we do it better than that guy over there? Because in reality, we all use the same words and we all sound alike to pretty much everybody that we're selling stuff to. So that's where I spend a lot of this time. And the piece of all of that I want to touch on here today, it's something that I've noticed becoming an increasingly important and relevant thing when talking to different clients and working with different organizations, because a lot of the challenges that people have, especially in, I don't like saying we're doing crisis communications when we're in cyber, because half the time it's not a crisis and everyone just thinks it is. So when we're doing incident response communications that can cover a variety of things, the heart of what really makes something successful and what you're seeing become an increasing challenge is that organizations are responding to events in a way that causes them to lose the trust of the people whose trust matters to the very heart of what their organization does. So we're going to get into that a little bit here, but essentially you lose the trust of the people who matter and who come to you as customers and clients and whatever form that is. And how in the world can you keep that from happening in your role when your role is not the PR guy sitting on the other side of the building talking to the media all the time? And we're going to talk a little bit about what the trust piece is, the security piece is, how they overlap together, and what you can do in your role. Unless anybody here actually sit in a communications or marketing role? Because if so, you actually took a wrong turn. You really did mean to be somewhere else. So I don't talk to those folks because they already get this. They already think they know what they're doing. I like talking to you because quite often it's your ass on the line when something goes wrong. So let's make sure you understand how to make it go right across the organization and how to provide information into that process that makes everything more successful on the other end. So that's where we are. Trust and security, not often two things in their traditional sense that come together, but both of them are so incredibly critical to keeping an organization going. And we'll interchange business, company, organization. I don't care if you work at a school. I don't care if you work at a nonprofit. I don't care if you work at an enterprise, a small business. It doesn't matter. This piece of that is going to be shaped like you, but foundationally it's going to be the same as everybody else. So bear with me on the vocabulary. I also say cyber, not InfoSec. If that offends you, there's a room downstairs. All right. So trust and security. Okay, this is older than me, believe it or not. I just hit my 40th birthday, so I feel like I walk into any room and I'm like, yep, grandma's here. What's up? How you guys doing? So this is how I view so many different organizations, so many different companies. You go in, you've got trust and it's all nice and neat and it's in the little PR and marketing and comm side of the house and it's all shiny and pretty. And then there's security is like, get out of the way. I'm in the trenches. I'm getting down. I'm getting dirty. I'm fixing stuff. And they have to be linked together. So we're going to talk a little bit about both. I want to start on the security side, and bear with me. We're going to do a lot of what I think is very logical stepping through these different things. So the objective of security at a company, an organization, a school, whatever, is to protect the organization. It's very easy to think that it is simply to protect the network, to protect the system, to protect this device, this thing. But in reality, you are part of a larger functioning ecosystem within your company that all has to work together to protect itself at any point in time. So the overall objective for security has to be a broader, wider view than just the thing that's right in front of you. And the more that you can understand about that broader view, even if you're only responsible for the thing in front of you, the more you can understand that wider view, the better off you're going to be at protecting that thing and helping the overall ecosystem function. In a crisis, in an incident, in an event, whatever your word is of the day, the objective from the business side is to recover with as minimal of a long-term impact as possible. It's to make sure that when this is done, when the dust is settled, that we're still operating on the other end, that bump isn't a big bump. This is when you talk about the difference between an incident and a crisis. You can take an incident and you can mishandle it left, right, up, down, and sideways and turn it into a crisis. But it doesn't have to start that way. But there's a difference. And no matter what size or what shape the event is you're looking at, the object is to get through it with as minimal of a bump as possible. This is really all wrapped up in the concept, I know we've all heard a billion times over, of everything's resilience. It's how you get through it. It's making sure at the end of the day, everything about your organization is thriving afterwards just as much as it was thriving before. That's key. Not just your piece, but every part of the company. And it means that it's not enough to just get your piece of the world, your network, your system clean and up and running if you've somehow, to do that, screwed up other parts of the business that are now no longer thriving. A good example here is customer relationships. That sounds completely foreign and disconnected from anything else you're hearing in this room. And that's good, because again, you'd be in the wrong spot. But when you look at the kinds of things that you see now that are big and scary about data breaches out in the real world, like in the headlines, in the media, the ones that you're seeing are the ones that are being handled poorly and that are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger problems. And a lot of time that's related to the fact that they're impacting and being mishandled one-on-one in a relationship and a communications with the customers and the people who are directly impacted. So it's not enough to just handle your piece of it. If in doing so, you manage to screw up everything else. That's not resilience. So we're going to talk a little bit about the actual costs of a data breach and where this actually links in. We're moving here kind of quickly because this is a 30-minute talk that's usually an hour. So you're welcome. I cut out like 4 slides and I'm going to talk fast. So bear with me here. If you didn't have cookies, you'll stay more awake than the rest of us. Or maybe I should have had fewer. I don't know. So if we look at the 2019 cost of a data breach report that came out, thank you very much, Ponyman and IBM. Love that thing. The average cost of a data breach this year, $3.92 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. Where is that cost coming from? What are the different buckets? $1.42 million, or 36%, the largest bucket of what makes up that average cost, is lost business. Lots of things go into lost business, but one of the big pieces of that category is lost customers. It's people who used to give you money to do something who are now choosing to give that money to someone else and not to you. That hurts your business. You lose customers, that hurts your business. You lose all of your customers, you don't even have a business. There were really interesting statistics that were included in the report this year that I had not seen previously that indicate to me that other people are paying more attention to this particular slice of our world. Companies that lost less than 1% of their customers after a data breach had an average cost of $2.8 million. They saved nearly $1.1 million by losing fewer customers. Companies that lost over 4% of their customers had an average cost of $5.7 million, significantly higher. So what do you think the average percentage of lost customers is? Where do you think in that range between less than 1 and more than 4? Average? 3.9%. That's how close everybody is to hitting these higher numbers and having that bigger impact just from customer loss. So why is it that some companies lose and cost more and some companies lose and cost less? What's the distinction? It was really interesting looking at some of the others. There was another study, again, another Ponyman study that they did. 65% of breach victims said that they lost trust in the organization. They specifically cited the loss of trust, and of that group, 27% discontinued their relationship. So you find that there's a relationship, there's a correlation between losing trust and taking your business elsewhere in the context of a data breach. That's the overlap. There was a specific finding that the loss of customer trust had serious financial consequences for the companies experiencing this data breach. And there was a relationship documented between having a strong security posture and having loyal customers and trust. Those two things were related. That's not an area that has been studied for years and years and years like a lot of other impact studies have done. But it's becoming a more relevant thing. It's becoming a more common thing, and it's causing people to look at it more, and I expect to see more like this in the coming years. So trust is obviously important. Trust is obviously impacted during a data breach. But what exactly is it that we're talking about? So it seems like one of those obvious words where no one actually knows how to define it because everyone just kind of knows what it means. But if you really look at the words behind it, reliability, truth, ability, and strength of someone or something. We trust that you're going to be honest and reliable and consistent and stable over and over. It's foundational to your business. It's all the things we just said. If someone doesn't trust you, they're not going to do business with you. They're going to go somewhere else. It's very basic. I should have said this in the beginning. This is not the rocket science lecture. There's nothing rocket science about what we're doing. I'm pretty sure based on all the words I understood in the last session I sat in, there was rocket science down there. But there is not rocket science up here. It is just a piece of something that isn't that common. But when you suddenly put it together with what you do and the rocket sciencey, techie, cool stuff that you're working on all the time, something clicks and it makes more sense. So back to trust. Foundational your business. It drives your reputation. Trust and reputation go back and forth. They're interrelated. You get a reputation for being trustworthy. You have more business. You grow. You lose that trust. Your reputation decreases. You lose business. You're done. It's as simple as that. It's such a common thing in other parts of the business world to talk about that the actual term trusted consumer brand is a thing that companies aspire to. Think about something like Starbucks, or I know Apple's a bad example. It usually works in other crowds, but go with me. People who buy from those stores don't do it because of very specific details about the products they're getting there. They don't do it because Starbucks coffee is amazing. It's actually burnt. We all know that. But we go there anyway because it's Starbucks and it's reliable and it's consistent and it's going to be fine. That's a trusted consumer brand. People want that, and it's all around, I just trust your name, and that's it. So how do you build trust if it's that important? If only there was some like magical thing that we knew would lead to trust and actually build it and preserve it and grow it, and oh wait. Yeah, that's there. So this is an area that the business side of the world has been exploring for decades. What causes trust? What builds trust? What loses trust? How do you get trust back? Right there. Communication. Good communications builds trust. Talking to people. How do you build trust in your personal lives? How do you get coworkers to trust you, neighbors to trust you, teachers to trust you? You talk to each other. You communicate, and you do it effectively. You do it in a way that is consistent, that is reliable, that is honest. And again, we're not going to jump into all these details here. These are words that if you don't already know what they mean, see me after. We'll figure it out. It's transparent. It's informative. It means when you're talking to someone, you're actually telling them information. You're not just talking at them because the sound of your voice is cool and you have nothing else to say. There are times and places to say nothing with lots of words. That's a whole different talk also. But there's a place for that. And it's in this space too. But it's not part of the consistent trust building side of the house. Trust is built through actions and words. It's not just what you say. It's how you back it up with what you do, and then how you tell people what you're doing. Not just what you did for one person, but how you told everyone else what you did so that everybody understood and believed that your actions were reliable and trustworthy. Good communication, both in words, in actions, and in how you talk about those things that you are doing. That's how you build trust. And trust, again, going backwards, said it's not rocket science. Trust is something that drives your business. Fun facts. I like fun facts. Didn't put any gold stars in this one, but there would be like little gold stars all around here. We do a lot of gold stars in my house. I have little ones. Another survey. 55% of IT and data security folks knew that a data breach was going to negatively impact the organization's reputation. I'm not sure if I should be excited that it was 55 or incredibly depressed it was only 55. It's better than 54, so we'll take it. 55 knew it was going to negatively impact your reputation. 71% didn't think they had to care. 71% said, that's not my job, that's fine. No big deal. Take a little step back to what we just talked about the impacts of a data breach being driven by the loss of trust and reputation amongst your customers. Do you think maybe somewhere in there might be a reason that you should also care? Who gets fired? Who loses their job when a breach goes horribly, horribly wrong? Is it the marketing team? Nope. If it is, whoa. Go somewhere else. That place is weird. 71% do not believe that it is their responsibility, and only 18% collaborate with other functions at the organization on brand protection. Something as simple as making sure that our IR plan accounts for something like preserving customer trust. Only 18%. That is a very small number of the people in this room, but hey, 18 is better than 17. But what can you do so that you are in the 18? How can you make sure you're in the 18? What can you do from your role to balance the security you're directly responsible for and the trust that you're responsible for maintaining across your entire organization? Because that's the whole point of security. We're going to go through this part kind of quickly here. I am going to make sure we end more or less on time here. I like to start with looking at an event timeline. I'm really bad at graphics. Bear with me. That little red thing right there, that's an event. We're going to call that a data breach for simplicity, okay? Pretend like it's a big one because those are easier examples. So when you look at an event timeline, you have the time period, I've seen this presented a million ways, left of boom, whatever you want to call it. Like, this is normal life. Nothing's gone wrong. Everything's fine. What can you do in that time period? Something happens. What? Chaos reigns. Something happens. Shit's hitting the fan. Everyone's trying not to be the one who gets fired. During. What can you do during? And then what can you do after? What can you do after? Probably going to turn this into a circle one of these days when I'm not being lazy. But what do you do after as you cycle back into that before period and things get back to normal and you do it all again? What can you do to maintain trust from your role? Beforehand, trust bank. Trust bank. Trust bank, there's a million different words for this too. It's a very common concept in the business side of the world. What can you do to build up the trust bank before it starts so that you have something to draw down when you need it? Having a built up stash of trust, having people who already really trust you because you've proven yourself ahead of time mean that when something goes wrong, they're going to give you just enough slack to catch your breath and figure out what's going on. They're not going to be all over you immediately because they already see, I told you they weren't trustworthy. They're going to pause before they say that. And that pause gives you a chance. We're going to talk a little bit more about each of these. During, you got to walk and chew gum at the same time. Same time, walk and chew gum. That concept doesn't mean anything to you. See me afterwards. We'll explain it again. But it means you have to do all these things at one time. You can't just be focused on fixing the incident. You have to be focused on fixing the incident and communicating effectively about it to the people who need the information at the same time. You have to be able to do more than one thing at a time. And then after, review what worked, what didn't, start over, fix it. If you broke something along the way, fix it fast. If you did it, great. Make a note of what worked so you have it for next time. You're getting back into that standard normal. So before building up the trust bank, how do you do that? How do you develop trust, build up a positive reputation? How do you pick the right words, have the right actions? We just talked about this. It's good communication, but it's a little more than that. And it's a lot more than that when your role is not the person sitting over in the marketing team doing all the talking. From your place, from your spot, whatever shape that may be in, whether you're security, whether you're tech, whether you're in the wrong room and you're not sure why you're here, whatever your role is, building up relationships internally amongst your team and amongst teams that are not yours across the organization, building those relationships ahead of time, because you are going to need to interact with each other when something goes wrong. You're going to need to know who to talk to on the comms team, who to talk to in HR, who in the world to talk to at legal. And knowing all of those things, because at some point, something that happens will intersect with your little slice of the world, whatever shape that may be. And knowing who to talk to about what at that moment is critical. And having trust built up ahead of time with those individuals and those offices is going to make or break the difference for you and what you're doing and how you're able to help. Service. It's not just knowing people and talking to people. It's actually, again, I almost feel even silly for saying this. It's doing your job to the best, most reliable, most consistent way that you know how to do it. It's being known for and building up your own reputation in your own seat for good, responsible, reliable, trustworthy service and information. So that when people need something from you in the heat of a moment, they know that they're going to get something from you that's worth getting. And it's communication. It's talking to people internally, externally, across teams, across the company in a way that gives them information that they need in a reliable and trustworthy way. It's not just telling them what they want to hear, ignoring their questions because they're annoying, because we all know different parts of your company are going to be annoying. That's usually where I am. But it's talking to them and it's building up those chains of communication so that they exist when you actually need them. So your trust bank is relationships, it's service, and it's communication. And it's doing all of those things over and over and over. And then when something goes wrong, relying on the fact that you've already done them and you're not learning how to do them now. During walking and chewing gum. Same as we said before, it's a focus on fixing the thing at hand while at the same time preserving the other important things of the company, helping make sure that the things that need to thrive outside of your space are still thriving, and knowing that the people who are responsible for the trust piece of that, people who are responsible for communication, because hopefully someone in your organization is responsible for communicating during an incident, and if they're not, talk to me afterwards. We'll have a longer conversation. Incident response communications is a very key part of this. That's how you talk to all those stakeholders. And knowing the kinds of information that need to be relayed at different times and the kinds of information and questions that the person in that position is going to need in order to effectively communicate is how you can help. And no matter what size or shape the incident is, no matter what size or shape your organization is, they're always going to be answering the same exact 4 questions. If they've been really, really, really smart and they've done this ahead of time, you've already answered these questions with them. And they're just asking you specifically which of the things applies to the incident at hand. They always need to know, who am I going to have to tell? Who do I have to tell and who should I tell? That's a whole separate conversation. When do I tell them? Who needs to be told immediately? Who can be told later? Who am I required to tell by legal in the next 72 hours? Who do I need to tell before I tell that guy so they don't get mad that I didn't tell them first, etc. It's way more complicated than it should be. How do I tell them? They're always going to be making a decision about who the spokesperson is. It's not always the same person. What channel am I going to communicate this information on? Am I going to send out an email, a notice, a phone call? What am I going to do or say? And what am I going to tell them? What actually is happening? What's the information? What are the facts? What do I know? What do I not know? What's the content of the thing that this person is going to tell at this magic time to this magic group? Answering those 4 questions for every specific incident is something that is not the responsibility of the communicator to answer. It's the responsibility of everyone on the ground who sits and owns the information to feed into that process for that decision. And then after, you review, and you repeat. You do the same things. You see, how can I take steps? How can I take action that gets us back to regular order as quickly as possible? Because people need to get back there for this company and for this business. What do I need to fix? What did I do wrong? What needs to get better? What did I miss? And you start over. It's the same with any incident response plan that you're putting together. The end is always review, adjust, repeat as necessary. And you do it until you're done. Action matters. Being consistent matters. Not changing your story all the time, not changing your information flow all the time. And for the love of God, just try not to do it again while you're still cleaning up the first one. Again, this is not rocket science. I shouldn't feel silly I've had to say that as many times as I have in the last few years. If you've already messed something up and you're still cleaning it up, try not to break anything else. Pretty straightforward. There's no hidden meaning behind that. It's exactly what it sounds like. All right. So key takeaways. We just covered very quickly, because I've been talking very fast, a lot of step by step things that if you're not walking out of here afterwards going, oh yeah, I definitely already knew that, then good. I'm glad you listened to this. But if that's what you're thinking, then good, because linking those concepts to the work you do every day is not something that you get to do every day. But knowing that all these things are connected and how is what will make you better at your piece of the world and give you a better sense of everyone else's world, so that you can more effectively navigate through them, whether you want to move up in the world at some point or not, or whether you want to stay where you are and just get better at what you do. So key takeaways. Good communication builds trust. Period. End of story. Would drop the mic, but it's not mine. Before, during, and after, good communication is always going to matter, and it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just something that gets locked up in the corner. You know, we joke about like locking the IT team in a little closet over here while you're locking your comms team in a little closet on that side of the house. It's important that everybody realizes that they have a role in communicating effectively across the organization. And you need to take time. If you're not directly involved in doing it, you need to take time to understand the incident response plan. Who's involved? When are they involved? At what points do different teams come in? What does it look like? What's a crisis? What's not? Who do I need to be able to give information to when I have information, so that they can do their jobs more quickly and more effectively? And at the end of the day, we can make good objective decisions and all get through this in a clean, easy way. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There's a lot of stuff here that is not falling squarely in your wheelhouse. And if for some reason something that seemed really easy on a Monday suddenly gets really hard on a Wednesday, don't be afraid to ask somebody. Don't be afraid to ask for help. In your organization, out of your organization, there are people who live and breathe this stuff, and they know how to link all those different pieces of the house together in a way that matches the shape and footprint of your organization. And that's what matters. There's no one size fits all here. So it's art and it's science. There's more science than you realize, but at the end of the day, it's all about risk management and making the kinds of decisions that help your business thrive. That's what we're all doing anyway. So, any questions? Yes. An awake God. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of people who, a lot of times there's an increasing range of responsibilities, and everyone has a little bit of a different take on like all the fancy titles that get thrown around these days. But it's essentially, you're all doing the same kind of work, but there is a nod towards the fact that this trust element has to stretch across the organization and has to be focused on by somebody, because otherwise it falls down everybody else's list. Because there's always a bigger fire than preserving trust. But at the end of the day, if you don't do it, it doesn't matter what fires you put out anyway. So yes, it's becoming something that is definitely bubbling up in the food chain. So the more you understand about it, regardless of where you sit in those spaces, then the better off you're going to be to help not only where your company needs to be right now, but where they are starting to realize they are going in the future, and you can actually get there ahead of them, which is kind of cool. So yes. Those are my favorite. Oh, I definitely agree on the being transparent part. I tend to take a slightly less antagonistic role towards the media's relationship with the world. Their job is to report. Their job is to report things that aren't necessarily what you want them to report. But one way, and again, we didn't jump into all the specifics and all the details, with our time constraints and what we were covering today. But if we're diving into how to do crisis comms the right way, essentially 101, whether you're in a cyber scenario or not, do a lot of this in security situations as well. If you're not talking, someone else is. So there are a lot of things you can do along the way to make sure that that's where you get into that. I just gave you a whole bunch of words, but I didn't say anything. But you're going to report all those words, and then you're not going to make up your own words because I gave you my words. So filling those gaps and not leaving big holes in the public conversation and in the dialogue, whether it's media or social media in particular, is very critical to maintaining control of the ship as you're driving along. Because if you're not driving it, someone else will, and you'd rather be on it than under it. That's probably a better analogy. All right. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.